Hey y'all, I am Victory. I help provide insight to empower. And today I wanted to pose the question to you. How do you feel or how do you differentiate between you or others being victimized and playing the victim? So my experience with this has been, let's say, twofold. In therapy, it was very hard for me to wrap my head around or come to terms with, let's say, weakness. Having done 4 years in the U.S. Marines, deployed twice to Afghanistan, the message, both implicitly and explicitly, was show no weakness. Show no weakness. And being victimized, legitimately being berated, abused mentally, emotionally, physically, especially in, as was the case for me in early childhood and adolescence, and then in the Marines and in Afghanistan. It was the case that mentally, emotionally, and physically, I went through some traumas. Meaning, for me, how I interpret that in relation to victim mentality, victimization, is that when a person is victimized, they are the subject to, let's say, adverse treatment, just to put it lightly. Playing the victim is using an experience that has already passed to keep ourselves in hiding, to keep ourselves from taking risks, from moving on, moving forward, and putting ourselves out there again. Because putting ourselves out there again, being really open, mentally, emotionally, physically communicating, showing up, being fully present, from that mentality, not having processed it, means that we might be subject to it again. We might be subject to being victimized again. Now, I can tell you from like a spiritual standpoint, the why behind trauma or adversity. To go through it is to learn to process it, learn to overcome it, learn to recover. And in so doing, we develop, or at least learn to develop, a why it happened. So let's say it pertains to our mission in this life, our purpose, and living with intention. So let's say in one instance where I was victimized was at the public pool with my mother. What happened was, and feel free if you feel so inclined to take note as to how I'm laying this out, because if you want to overcome your own traumas, it helps to, one, be able to communicate them, to be open to bring them out into the light, and two, you've healed or have healed significantly from a past trauma or wound when it no longer hurts to talk about it. Yeah. So we were at the pool, and I was about 11 or 12 years old. I was in middle school, and I was overweight. So my mom's way, doing her best, having compassion, because she has certainly faced her own trials and tribulations, not making what she did okay, but just understanding that that's feeding into how she processes life. She digs her nails into my love handles while we're in the pool. So I'm buoyant, I'm light. She digs her nails into my love handles and just starts lifting me up out of the pool, like above the water, up and down, while saying wee, and like feigning having a good time. And so this really kind of like messed me up in terms of like how to interpret being hurt. And it sucked, and I developed, a very unhealthy relationship with my body. From like a purposeful perspective, I can see that in having, let's say I agreed to be in this life, to go through those experiences. What I've learned is that I can be, it taught me to stand up for myself and set boundaries, and to learn to confront those who it seems may even take pleasure in hurting me, and have compassion. In, another sense, I can come to the world a little wiser, a little more mature, but also to be an advocate for positive self-image and having a good, healthy relationship with my own body. Where that's an example of being victimized. Now, if I was playing the victim, that may well have happened, but and this was the case for me, in saying, I attract women who take pleasure in hurting me. Let's say that's an underlying belief. That's how I'm showing up and playing the victim. What happens is that even if I don't, I was saying that for a while. I was saying like I was attracting emotionally unavailable women. And so because I have that belief, my subconscious picks out the types of women who will reinforce that belief. I will choose them, and I will also bring to that relationship the cognitive load, the expectation that that's who they're going to be. And so I'll act in a way where it's kind of subconsciously very subtle energy, on a subtle energy level. I'm kind of cueing them. I'm setting them up to treat me in that way, to relive that experience and relive that trauma. Now, the more aware I become of the ways in which I am victimizing or playing the victim, the more I can heal the unprocessed emotion. Because going through that experience with myself and, with my mom, in the moment, it was too much to process. It was way too much to process, mentally and emotionally and physically. So coming back around to what I said earlier about how we can communicate what we maybe feel ashamed of, how we can communicate our wounds, how we can heal our wounds, is by openly talking about them, especially with those who hurt us. When I can talk about it, even now I'm kind of like dissociating. And I can feel that, and I can be aware of that. And so what I do is become aware of where I feel, what I do is become aware of where I feel sensation in my body, and I start to identify and acknowledge what emotions are coming up. So right there, I kind of got like dissociated, and I started to get like forgetful of what I was talking about. And what I was talking about was how much emotion, how much energy, mentally, emotionally, and physically, there is to process. And when we go back to these memories, to these experiences, and we process what was left unprocessed, our load mentally, emotionally, and physically becomes lighter. And in that emptying out of our minds, of our emotions, and of our bodies, it leaves space for new experiences to come in. But even behind that, in a more like meta way, what this space to me represents is expanded awareness. Because I let go of, in a way, holding up the memory, the emotion, the tension in my physical body like a shield to keep new things from coming in, because I don't want to, because I feel insecure or afraid of being in the world. When I drop that shield and I forgive and I acknowledge and I'm aware and I process that emotion, new distance is created. Again, the awareness expands in terms of what I was feeling in that moment, what it meant to me, and in another way, what it meant to be holding on to it for so long. I become more aware of the quality of my mental, emotional, and physical bodies, and of my relationships with others. Because if that was, if you think of the story of the lion with a thorn in its paw, that was my thorn. And so in processing the unprocessed, it's like slowly and steadily removing that thorn. And in another way, it's like doing mental, emotional, and physical hygiene, cleaning my room, right? That's not something that happens once and then it's done. It's something that may need to be revisited until it no longer hurts. And in that way, in letting it go and becoming aware, knowingly and unknowingly, I let go of playing the victim and further, subconsciously being subject to setting myself up to be victimized again. Suddenly I can see the red flags coming further and further down the field. And in so doing, I can, if it's unavoidable, I can prepare for it. I can set up practices like breathing, like journaling, like asking for time and space to process, like setting up boundaries. And in so doing, I have gone from a very maladjusted latchkey kid who was suicidal and had a suicide. I've attempted suicide because of how poor my way of relating to the world was. And in expanding my awareness, my consciousness, in forgiving and letting go, I've improved my relationship with myself, with others, and with life itself. And if nothing else, I hope to have that mean something, to have that add value to someone's life who may be going through something similar. Something I learned early on was that life doesn't get easier, but we can get a lot better at life. So in terms of how you relate to your life experience and how you relate to victimization, I would appreciate it if you dropped a comment on what you think, on what your experiences have been. Because a major part of healing is being seen and being heard. Being seen and being heard. And if nothing else, I would love to be able to see you and hear you. Because no matter what you go through, it doesn't change that you are worthy of being seen and being heard. Heard. I hope this helps. If it did, please like, share, subscribe. I appreciate it. Thank you. I love you.